Happy New Year, friends, and welcome to the Roseheim Dining Room. I hope that you all are off to a good start for this new year. I am Reverend Donna Roseheim, and I have the privilege of being the pastor of the chapel. If I've not yet met you, I will look forward to doing that. I am recovering from COVID. I'm doing much better, and thank you for all the well wishes and prayers. I want to give special thanks to Corey and Claudia because they made it possible for me to record this message and to be with you. I'll also be laying on the couch and worshiping with you as well. So thanks to all the people who helped to make worship happen. You know, I realized, first of all, that I'm very grateful for the vaccinations I had and that this has been a pretty light case compared to what most people have experienced. So I'm grateful for that. And it's also been a real reminder to me that the decisions we make, sometimes without having a clue, like there were several days in there I did not know I had COVID, that my decisions affected other people. And God has made us interconnected, so we all need to be aware of it. Right now, the plan for me is to come back to work on Wednesday, but I'll be keeping a mask on nonstop for another 5 days after that. If you need to get in touch with me, please feel free to call or email because I am working in spurts, so that's a good thing. Well, you know, for me, it seemed like it was a really good thing that I got that positive test result on the last day of 2021 because I don't know about you, but I am ready for a different 22. I am ready for a different time. So I'm leaving that in 2021. I saw this cartoon where two people were talking and one was saying, oh, I'm so worried about 2022. The world's such a mess. Everything's bad. I'm just afraid 2022 is going to be awful. And the other person looked at them and said, well, I'm not terrified at all. I think it's going to bring flowers. First person said, flowers? Why would you think a stupid thing like that? And the other person responds, because I'm working really hard to plant flowers. What are we planting with the time that God has given us? I'm going to challenge all of us throughout 2022 to be aware that what we use our time for makes a difference, not just for us, but for everyone. And what would it look like if we continuously worked to plant flowers, flowers of spiritual growth, flowers of hope, flowers of possibilities? And what if we trusted God to help grow them? People of God, wherever you are, there is a time for everything, as you read in the responsive reading from Ecclesiastes 3. And the time right now needs to be for Christians to stand together for spiritual growth and to honor our Christ. It is time for us to live into the abundant life that Christ wants for everyone. We're going to be looking in January at several skills that will help us to live more into the abundance that Christ has for us. And one of those very first skills is recognizing what time is it? What is it that we are supposed to be about right now? How can we faithfully live if we're not even really clear about what this time is requiring from us and asking from us and for us? Obviously, if it's time to help someone and we're asleep, we're going to miss that opportunity. If it's time to dance with joy and we're stuck in anger and grief, we're not going to be able to do that either. And if it's time for us to let go, but we're determined to hold on, then that's not going to work either. We have to be aware of what time we are in, and then we need to be faithful to step into that time. In some ways, as a congregation, we share some of the same time, some of the same focus for events and outreaches that we do. And yet, as individuals, we're all in pretty different times of our lives. For some of us, it's a time when our physical body is not what it used to be. It's slowing us down, and we can't run and do all the things that we would like to do, that we're used to doing. And perhaps this time has caused us to be more reflective and to be aware of what we still can do to love and share. For others of us, it's a time when we're caring for other people, maybe children or grandchildren, neighbor kids, parents, or other friends. For some of us, it's a time when we're supposed to be working extra hard, creating income and helping ourselves and to others to prepare for today and for the future. For others of us, it's a time of really fast-paced growing and learning and studying. Particularly those who are still in school. There's always some other book you need to be reading or working with. Hopefully all of us are at least partially in a time of growing and learning and studying, because that's part of what keeps us fresh. The writer of Ecclesiastes that you read in the responsive reading was painfully aware that life is changing all the time. And as we read more in that chapter, we realize that the writer was really kind of depressed and was not happy that there is so much change in life, and especially about the hard parts that sometimes change brings to us. But he was also coming to grips with the fact that change happens, and to resist change is to resist the very presence of the Creator within us. The writer knew that life has lots of different times, and one key to living fully is being in the time where we are and investing everything we have to invest in it with God's help. Excuse me. In today's time, we celebrate Epiphany. That's part of our time today. Technically, Epiphany lands on Thursday, January 6th this year. It's a time in the church year when we focus on the coming of the wise men to see the young child Jesus and on Jesus' baptisms. So why those two stories? Well, both of those stories really focus on the gift of Christ's physical presence in the world. They remind us that Christ came for all people, that Christ came as a human being, even for non-Jews like the wise man, and that through Christ we see and understand God. We know God in a way that it had not been known before. There is an epiphany, a new awareness because of Christ's physical presence. So what a great thing it is, I think, to celebrate the new year by focusing on the reality that Christ is with us, Emmanuel. You may remember the story about the wise men that's told in the book of Matthew. Matthew tells us that they came from the east. Most scholars believe that probably was somewhere in Persia or perhaps modern-day Iran. They traveled somewhere between 800 and 900 miles, which is not a small journey. Even in a car, that takes several hours to do that. Although they were not Jews, they all understood something of the promise of a Messiah, a leader who would come and bring peace to the world. They were wise enough to believe that a star might actually be trying to tell them something. How many times have you maybe missed a clue, and I've missed a clue, that God's put right there for us? They were wise enough to believe that there was more than what they could see and they already knew. They were wise enough to understand that this Messiah was for more than just a few, it was for many. And they realized that they could not stop. This was their time to move ahead, even if it led them to a really long and dangerous journey. They realized, too, that it was time for them to share their wealth. They were to bring treasures with them, gold and frankincense and myrrh, each that would help the Christ's family to move forward in life. They made finding this child their focus until they found him. It was their time to find this treasure. We never hear of the wise men again, and we have to wonder what difference this time of meeting the Christ child and all those months of journeying to meet him, what difference did that time make in their lives? How did it change their lives? How did it make them different as they met each challenge in their lives and the times that God gave to them? And then we have to look at ourselves and ask the question, how does meeting God through Christ today change our times, our lives? How does it draw us into living in these times? How are we led to love, grow, and serve? Now, those answers may look different for each of us, but they should look like living in our time in a way that honors Jesus' life and his teachings. Anything less is not enough to meet the challenges of our time. There's a story that has meant a lot to me, and I hope it will to you, of someone who lived up to the challenges of their time. This man was a Jew. His name was Angel, and he owned a famous bakery in Germany. And he had an ability in a certain time in his life to be attentive to someone that God was calling him to save. And he tells the story that when he was a teenager in Nazi Germany, the Nazis were gathering up the Jews and killing them, putting them in prisoner of war camps, and were merciless, quite frankly. The Nazis had loaded him and others from his community onto a train and headed them towards Auschwitz, which, if you know much about history, you know that Auschwitz was one of the worst concentration camps. We were left for many days in cars without food, he says. They had no beds, they had no blankets, and they had very little clothing. And it was snowing everywhere. The cold wind froze our cheeks. There were hundreds of us on those cold, horrible nights. No food, no water, no place to hide. The blood felt like it was freezing in our veins. And next to me was an elderly Jew who was very loved in my city. He was all shaking and looking terrible, and I wrapped him with my hands to warm him. I hugged him tight to give him some warmth, and I rubbed his hands and legs and face and neck, and I begged him to stay alive. I cheered him up, and this is how I kept this man warm all night. I was tired and frozen, but I kept massaging his body. So many hours passed by, and finally the morning came, and the sun started to shine. I looked around to see other people, and to my horror, all I saw were frozen corpses. All I could hear was the silence of death. The frosty night had killed everyone. They died of the cold. Only 2 people survived that night, the old man and me. The old man survived because I didn't let him freeze, and I survived because I made him warm. Allow me to tell you the secret of survival in this world. When you warm the heart of others, then you will warm yourself. When you support, strengthen, and encourage others, then you receive support, strengthening, and encouragement in your life. Wow, did Angel live into his time, his moment? And by retelling this story, he again has lived into this time and this moment by sharing what he's learned. It is time in 2022 for supporting and strengthening and encouraging other people in the name of Christ. In fact, I think it's past time. We, the people of God in this chapel and around the world, it's time in Jesus' name to honor him by what we say and what we do. What if we and others focus on making this year, this time, one that focuses on supporting, strengthening, and encouraging all the people we meet? Not for us, but for Jesus. What if we use this time to practice hope, peace, joy, love, forgiveness, healing? What if? It's time. It's past time. Howard Thurman shared these words about the times that we are called to live. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among people, to make music in the heart. It is time. Are you ready? Amen. If you look to the side, you'll see one of Bill's and my favorite pictures. It's a picture that he was given by a congregation that he served. But it's a reminder to me about how important the bread and the cup are in our lives as Christians. Because it's a time that every single time we worship in the Disciples of Christ Church, that we come together to share the bread, to drink from the cup, to remember what Jesus has called us to be and to do. We stop other time for just a moment to recalibrate time by sharing this bread and this cup together. We do this because Jesus invited us to do that. If you are visiting the church, or no matter where you are in the world today, watching and worshiping with us, we hope that you'll participate. It's Jesus who's inviting you, and everybody's welcome. In the congregation at the chapel, if you need to get a little communion set, if you raise your hand, one of the deacons will bring that to you. And if you're at home, I encourage you, like I'm going to do, I'm going to go get a cracker and something to drink, and I'm going to share in communion too. May God bless us as we sing together and prepare our hearts for communion.